Good morning, students. This is Mike Lilly. The class is Private Security. This is lecture 20. It's hard for me to believe we've gotten that many lectures recorded in this class, but it is true. This is a shortened class period because, of course, Bluefield State's on the late schedule, or excuse me, inclement weather schedule today. So late getting started, even at that rate. And as you probably can tell, my voice is somewhat changed today. It's getting less and less. I'm not sure what's going to take, how long it's going to be till I stop talking this morning, but anyway, I'm having to drink liquid. Usually I might not have to drink quite so much. What we're going to talk about today is a subject which is getting kind of dear to my heart, and that's the issue of school security. And the reason I want to talk about school security, of course, is because the majority of schools, either here in West Virginia or elsewhere, are not staffed by public law enforcement, but rather by some private security firm. Here in Mercer County, for a number of years, we've used the Wallace firm, and I think they have a new one now. I'm not sure, because I don't have kids in school anymore. At any rate, basically, private security in schools has always been problematic. It is interesting that if I look at the recent shooting in Florida at a high school, which basically served wealthy white upper class students. Yeah, it's a public school, but it's a campus of what, 3,000 students, not just high school, but others. Somewhat privileged environment in that they have a lot of things that probably other public schools do not. But the one thing that's most interesting about it is apparently the lack of security that they had. They had security officers, but they weren't in the building at the time the shooting took place. And indeed, as we know, at least 2 security officers who should have been in the building arrived as the shooting starts, but refused to go inside, citing various reasons for not going inside. But of course, social media, what's called cowards, I don't know, because I don't know what official requirements or protocols they were under for not going inside the building. But one thing certainly is true over the years, without question, the massacre of Columbine all those years ago, it's hard to believe how long ago that's been, taught law enforcement and security people that you don't wait outside. You confront the shooter on the spot. You get inside the building. The sooner you confront, injure, kill, or capture the shooter, the more lives you will save. Now, a subsequent shooting after the Maryland case, again involving a young shooter, 2 students are injured, one of whom died at, I think, taking off life support either today or yesterday from a head injury. Many more have been killed, except the security guard gets in a gun battle with the murderer and kills him on the spot. And you note here that I did not say alleged murderer or accused murderer or accused shooter. I think there's no question he was the shooter and he died in the process of what happened. I'm honest, I don't like current media's preoccupation in trying to always talk of people as alleged, which of course is a synonym for supposed, when there's no doubt of what they did or didn't do. Yeah, I guess Nicholas Cruz in the Florida case has still not been found guilty and still going to await trial, but I also think there's no doubt he is the guy that killed all those people and wounded the others. But to me, it's this lack of security. Now, we here in West Virginia, southern West Virginia, to be honest, in certain high schools for some years now, have had metal detectors in the schools and have had private security that walked up and down the halls. Whether they were armed or not, they were still in the school there to intervene. Particularly, I know Mountain View High School in Welsh has had metal detectors probably for 15 years or more. Does Princeton High School, I think, have metal detectors? I'm not sure. I don't think Beaver High School has them yet, but I think they're probably getting ready to put them in. We know, however, interestingly enough, that the schools that are the safest for their children inside the buildings have been those usually located in the worst high crime neighborhoods in the country. And if we look, for instance, in New York City and Chicago, where every school has metal detectors and every school has armed guards patrolling the school. Yeah, there's violence getting to school, but generally speaking, few, if any, shootings take place inside the buildings because, again, of the entrance requirements that kids have to pass through. For instance, the Parkland school recently decreed that all students had to wear clear backpacks, right? Transparent backpacks. More than one school in our area already has that requirement and has had it for some time. Why? Because, again, of the facts that we have had issues in the past with people bringing into the school buildings contraband, whether it be guns or not. So we have had here in Mercer County a number of incidences involving guns being brought into class. Probably one of the earliest being back in the mid-70s, when a student at what was then Princeton Junior High brought in a firearm class and attempted to hold students hostage. That's a long time ago, but it's one of the earliest we've had, again, of this type of situation. In that case, it was a 13-year-old boy, and he got talked out of it by police when they arrived on the scene. The reason Mountain View has metal detectors is because of kids, again, bringing in their parents' pistols to class. And I think they had a shooting, not in the school, but outside the school. And so that's a problem. The other reason for metal detectors and clear plastic book bags is the issue of drugs. And of course, in our area, in our vicinity, we have a lot of narcotics being used by people underage. And it's but one way, again, of trying to I guess, lessen the amount of drugs being taken into class. Anyway, my comment about transparent book bags, I'm not sure that's true now, but I know it was for a short period of time. It was required. Not in the high school. I think it was in the middle school. Anyway, we've been on security alerts here longer, I guess, than they had at that school in Florida. But it still remains problematic to me that you can have a student come to class, former student come into the building, loaded to bear with gun, etc., and no screening whatsoever upon his entry. Another aspect is we talk about procedural controls or whatever. At almost all of our schools, once students are in the building, it is in essence a semi-lockdown, in that you cannot enter the building unless you press a button on the speakerphone announcing who you are and when you're allowed in. Some schools have armed guards that sit at the front of the, right, where the metal detectors are, and ask what you're doing there. And again, simple precautions to try to limit who can get into the school and who cannot get into the school. And on the workplace environment, this discussion we're having does transfer. Because, of course, some of our worst mass shootings, and by mass shooting, I mean more than one person being shot and killed at one time, or more than one person being shot and injured at one time, have taken place in workplace environments in which there was little, if any, control to prevent armed individuals from coming into the facility. For a long time, much of these mass shootings occurred in post offices. Not the post office itself, but the mail sorting rooms. And that's because, to be honest, I've known more than one person that worked as a clerk with the UPS. It is a high pressure environment to get the mail sorted, get it out. Depends on the facility itself, but the normal post office may not have the same time requirements as, say, a regional delivery or sorting service does. But I'm well aware that since the UPS took the regional sorting service out of Bluefield, and now all mail in West Virginia goes from where the post office is to Charleston and is then redirected to wherever else it goes. The Charleston facility is a high pressure environment to get the mail sorted and placed and sent back. It's always seemed to me bizarre that if you mail a letter in Bluefield, West Virginia to a Bluefield, West Virginia address, it has a Charleston, West Virginia postmark on it. Why? Because it's been driven by truck, mail truck, to Charleston and then back. Anyway, the high pressure attitude in mail rooms led in the early 80s a number of workplace shootings, enough so that we had a phrase about calling people who shot others during the workplace as going postal, because that's where most workplace shootings were taking place. Forcing post offices and post regional sorting places around the country to adopt more stringent requirements about their employees to try to prevent that from happening. That doesn't mean they did, but we haven't seen any UPS workplace shootings in a long time. I still remember in Atlanta, Georgia, where we had a day trading center. For those students listening to me, while my voice is still squawking, there are lots of people in this country who make their living on the stock market. They're called day traders. And the reason is because they buy and sell securities of all different types in essentially a 24-hour or less cycle. And there are various place centers that have been set up where you have, again, access to the stock exchanges and Chicago Mercantile, which trades options. And individuals can come into these locations and sit and trade online. Some make a lot of money at it. Anymore, it's changed so much from having a dedicated center and console to simple internet trading, such as Schwab or Fidelity or Ameritrade or other sites. But the basic idea is simply the same. You buy or sell a stock depending on its performance during the day. And even though these stocks may gain or lose 10 or 20 cents a day, when you're selling thousands of shares, it amounts to a lot of money you can make. And well aware a number of people I'm aware of who made significant fortunes doing day trading. Well, this particular occasion, a day trader who was not very good at the craft, indeed had to clean his clock, money-wise, returns the same day with a gun in hand and shoots and kills 5 people on this day trading floor. So yes, these things happen. Other workplace environment in which people like to shoot up others in the 70s was McDonald's. Why McDonald's? Is it because they didn't like the Big Mac they bought with the fish fillet? No. It's because, I gather, it's because there were a lot of people that would be there and could be shot and injured. It was what we call a soft target. In other words, there weren't going to be any uniformed police officers or guards there at the McDonald's to protect their customers if they had a shootout. Most of the shootouts, by the way, at McDonald's involve work-related disputes. An individual was fired by their shift manager or whatever and wants revenge on that person and any others who work there at the store. Again, a soft target, because all they had to do is what? Leave and come back with a gun and walk in the door, and someone's going to say, "How may I serve you?" And they're going to get served with a few bullets in hand. That's a bad joke, but in essence, that's why McDonald's became such soft targets. And then, by the way, almost all of them, the majority of them were in California. It wasn't necessarily an East Coast phenomenon. Now, all of these continue to raise the issue of how do you prevent shootings in the workplace, and how do you prevent situations like that from taking place? And I'm not sure I know. We're already hearing, as a result of the issues about gun control, where people are talking and discussing the question of perhaps we should harden almost all public facilities to limit the ability of people to carry weapons. I don't know. Would you really go to McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's or whatever to sit down and eat if you knew you had to go through a metal detector when you went in the door? Right? I don't think so. Would you go to an Applebee's for happy hour if you knew there were going to be armed security guards in place to control you if they thought you were misbehaving, had one too many beers? Again, I don't know. Certainly, Buffalo Wild Wings would not have the traffic it currently has if there were people there to tone down people's reactions while watching games, etc. So it is a fine line, and I don't know what the fine line is. And finally, on my discussions this morning, and once again, I'm trying to get through here before my voice goes in the next 9 minutes of class. And I'm sorry I started so late. Public facilities. Even here locally, we have had hardened public access to facilities for some time. It really first started in the federal courthouses. I still remember many years ago in the 1970s, mid-70s, when, because of threats that had been made against the sitting judge at that time, Judge Knapp, District Judge Knapp here, who's now long since retired. I think he's dead now. And the other judge in Charleston, by striking minors. Again, a lot of labor issues at the time. All of a sudden, one day, metal detectors go up as you get ready to go inside the clerk's office. And there are armed guards outside the judge's chambers and secretary's office with a clipboard taking down names to make sure you're permitted to go speak to the judge on a particular case. Yeah, it's been 50 years really since that kind of started. In federal courthouses, even today, very secure. Basically speaking, average member of the public is not going to be allowed to go in and talk to the judges unless, again, you have a specific appointment that's been made, or you're an attorney in a case pending in front of the judge. Here in Mercer County, we have, of course, Mercer County Courthouse being built in the mid-30s is a very great Art Deco example of architecture. Originally built because the middle of the first floor of the courthouse is a semi-rotunda. Had 4 doors, all of which the public could enter into the building with, because their office is located on the corners of the 4 entranceways. All of those entranceways are now closed to the public except one, which means you have to go through a metal detector with a deputy sheriff there, whose job is to screen you when you go into the courthouse to make sure you're not carrying a gun or a knife or some other weapon. There is one other door I know which employees can go out of. They can't enter, they can go out of it with a push-button passkey system. But again, limited access to the place where most county business situations take place. If you need to check on a birth certificate or something of that nature, you have to go to the county courthouse to do so. You can't do it online. And your ability to get in there is limited. They want an ID, and they want to make sure you pass through. And this, by the way, is in both the main courthouse and also the courthouse annex across the street. All of these then are ways aimed at preventing violence from taking place, and are examples, as I've talked about in your text, of procedural and also other ways in which the possibility of violence can be curtailed. Would we have other things taken? Could other things do? And my answer is I don't know. We've not really had any shootouts in Mercer County courtrooms ever that I know of. We've had, again, escape attempts by inmates, including one famous inmate who broke a window in the holding cell there in the courtroom and somehow squeezed through about a 3-foot space, jumped out of the second floor of the building and broke his leg in the process, and then still tried to escape. That window, I think it was 24 inches wide. I mean, I don't know how the particular individual got out of there. At any rate, other than that, we don't have incidents, people bringing guns into the courtroom and this kind of thing. But it has happened in other courtrooms. So court security, therefore, is important in a number of venues, but the real question is, one, how do we protect students while in the classroom, while in the building, while in the school building? And two, how do we protect the public in certain areas or certain situations? I wish I knew. I don't know that I have all answers. In the future, will we really live in such a regulated society? We're always going to be checked, possibly to be searched or whatever. Once again, I don't have an answer there either. Suffice to say, however, that it's pretty obvious to me, just from observations I've had over all these years, that you have to balance the right of the public to enter a place versus the right of protecting the public. And so I don't know. But schools certainly are one place in which I cannot emphasize too much protection, too many safeguards to try to prevent guns from entering the premises. Now that doesn't always work, because at Sandy Hook Elementary School, I got 2 minutes left, 3 minutes, I guess. At Sandy Hook Elementary School, they had a new state-of-the-art security system. What did the murderer do? He shot the lock out on the front door and went in anyway. Shot the lock and the window out with his assault weapon, went in anyway. Which all the more gives reason that, unfortunately, schools have to be weapon hardened to prevent that kind of situation taking place again. Well, this has not been necessarily a pleasant subject to talk about, but given current issues taking place and discussions, basically talking again about hardening schools and other things, I would simply say that probably here in Mercer County and McDowell County and certain other counties, we're ahead of the curve when it comes to that. That's not necessarily a good thing to say, but it is a statement to say that, unfortunately, there aren't any there's no way to positively prevent violence, but certainly, as we've seen, it can be limited a great deal. Now, my voice is truly getting ready to go. I am hoping I will be able to talk Wednesday in this class, but I give no guarantees. At any rate, hopefully you'll be able to understand me better, and I'm sorry about this gravelly voice, which is probably going to go anytime soon. With that in mind, I'm going to sign off for the day, and we'll take more up about computers next class period.